I never thought I'd be the one to expose my own sister's wedding as a fraud, but when you've spent your entire life being treated like you're invisible, sometimes drastic measures are the only way to finally be seen. My name is Ellie, and for as long as I can remember I've lived in the shadow of my younger sister Mia, the golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, especially our mothers. Growing up, the differences in how we were treated were subtle at first. When I was 7 and Mia was 5, I noticed how my mother would rush to comfort Mia when she fell, while telling me to toughen up when I had the same scrapes. By the time I was in high school, the favoritism had become impossible to ignore. My straight A's were expected, while Mia's B's were celebrated with ice cream and praise. My soccer trophies gathered dust in the garage, while Mia's participation ribbons for dance recitals were prominently displayed in the living room. "Your sister is more sensitive than you," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the unfairness. "She needs more encouragement." I tried to believe her. I really did. I told myself that maybe I was stronger, more independent, less needy of validation. But deep down, I knew the truth. My mother simply preferred Mia. There was no logical explanation for it. Some parents just have favorites, and I wasn't it. My father was more balanced in his affection, but he worked long hours and traveled frequently for business. When he was home, he seemed oblivious to the dynamics between my mother and us girls, or perhaps he just didn't want to rock the boat. Either way, his passivity made him complicit. I left for college with a sense of relief, finally escaping the constant comparisons and the feeling of inadequacy that permeated our home. I chose a university 3 states away, while Mia stayed local. I built a life for myself, made friends who valued me, and eventually landed a job at a marketing firm in Chicago. I was good at what I did, and for the first time, I felt like I was thriving. So I limited my visits home to major holidays and kept phone calls brief. It was easier that way. Distance became my shield against the pain of never measuring up. "Ellie, it's Mom. Mia's engaged to James Harrington. You remember him, right? From the country club?" I did remember James. Handsome, charming, and from one of the wealthiest families in our hometown. I'd actually dated him briefly in high school before he'd moved on to date practically every other girl in our class. He had a reputation as a player, but that was years ago. People change, I reasoned. "You'll need to come home soon to help with the planning. The wedding's going to be at the Harrington estate in just 6 months. It's going to be the event of the year." I could hear the excitement in her voice, a level of enthusiasm she'd never shown for anything in my life. I agreed to visit the following weekend, already dreading what was to come. When I arrived home, the house had been transformed into Wedding Central. Bridal magazines covered every surface, and my mother was in her element, talking about flowers and caterers and guest lists. "Ellie, finally!" Mia rushed to hug me. Despite everything, I loved my sister. She wasn't to blame for our mother's favoritism, and she'd always been kind to me in her own way. "I'm so glad you're here. I need your help with everything." "I want you to be my maid of honor," she said, pulling back to look at me with those wide, innocent eyes that had always gotten her whatever she wanted. I hesitated. Being maid of honor meant spending months immersed in wedding planning, working closely with my mother, and putting my own life on hold. But the hopeful look on Mia's face made it impossible to refuse. That weekend set the tone for what would become the most exhausting 6 months of my life. Every weekend, I made the 4-hour drive home to attend dress fittings, cake tastings, and endless planning sessions. My mother micromanaged every detail, often dismissing my suggestions while praising Mia's, even when they were identical. "Ellie, that's not how things are done," she'd say with a dismissive wave. Then, minutes later, "Mia, that's brilliant. I was thinking the same thing." I tried not to let it bother me. This was Mia's time to shine, after all. But the old wounds kept reopening, especially when my mother began making comments about my own relationship status. "It's such a shame you haven't found someone yet," she'd say, shaking her head. "You're not getting any younger, you know." I had been dating someone, Ryan, a kind, thoughtful architect I'd met through work, but our relationship was still new, and I wasn't ready to subject him to my family dynamics. Besides, this wasn't about me. 3 months before the wedding, I met James for dinner, wanting to get to know the man my sister was marrying. He was as charming as ever, complimenting me on my career success and asking thoughtful questions about my life in Chicago. "Mia talks about you all the time," he said, smiling. "She really looks up to you." That surprised me. Mia and I had grown apart over the years, our conversations becoming more superficial. I hadn't realized she still thought of me that way. As dinner progressed, James ordered several drinks, becoming increasingly relaxed. When I mentioned a mutual friend from high school, his demeanor changed subtly. "Oh, Sarah. Yeah, I still see her around sometimes," he said, a strange smile playing at his lips. He laughed. "You could say that. We grab drinks now and then when I'm in the city for business." The way he emphasized drinks set off alarm bells in my head. I changed the subject, but the uneasiness lingered. The next day, I casually mentioned Sarah to Mia, watching her reaction carefully. Mia's face clouded momentarily before she forced a smile. "Oh yeah, they're just friends. James is friends with everyone." But I could see the doubt in her eyes, the flicker of insecurity. It was a look I recognized all too well. Jabafon. Over the next few weeks, I noticed other things. The way James would check out other women when Mia wasn't looking. How he'd disappear for hours, claiming work calls. The text notifications he'd quickly dismiss when Mia was nearby. I debated whether to say anything. Would Mia even believe me? Or would she see it as jealousy, an attempt to ruin her happiness? And my mother would certainly take Mia's side, accusing me of trying to sabotage the wedding out of spite. I was in town for the final dress fitting, 5 weeks before the wedding. After the appointment, I stopped by a coffee shop downtown to catch up on some work emails. That's when I saw him, James, sitting in a corner booth with a woman who definitely wasn't my sister. They weren't just talking. They were intimately entwined, his hand on her thigh, her fingers in his hair as they kissed. My blood ran cold. I quickly snapped a photo with my phone, then slipped out before they could see me. My hands were shaking as I drove back to my parents' house, my mind racing with what to do next. Mia was out with friends, but my mother was home, finalizing the seating chart in the dining room. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "I need to talk to you about James." Now she looked up, her expression hardening. "What exactly are you implying, Ellie?" I showed her the photo. It was unmistakable. James with his tongue down another woman's throat, his wedding ring clearly visible on his left hand. My mother stared at the photo for a long moment, then handed the phone back to me. "Delete that. Delete it, right now." Her voice was ice cold. "This wedding is happening, Ellie. The Harringtons are the most influential family in this town. Do you have any idea what this means for our family? For Mia's future?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But he's cheating on her. She deserves to know. What she deserves is a secure future with a good family. All men stray, Ellie. It's nothing Mia needs to concern herself with." "That's insane," I said, my voice rising. "You'd let her marry a cheater just because his family has money?" My mother stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. "You've always been jealous of your sister. Always trying to ruin things for her. Well, I won't let you ruin this. If you breathe a word of this to Mia, I'll tell her you made it all up because you can't stand to see her happy." In that moment, something inside me broke. All those years of being the less loved daughter, of having my feelings dismissed, of being painted as the problem, it all crystallized into a clarity I'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about Mia and James anymore. This was about a lifetime of being treated as less than, and I was done. "You know what, Mom? You're right about one thing. This wedding is happening. But not the way you think." I left the house without another word, ignoring her calls behind me. I drove straight to Sarah's apartment, the address easily found through social media. I needed to know the full story before I decided what to do next. Sarah was surprised to see me, but after I explained why I was there, she invited me in. What she told me confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed even more. "James and I have been seeing each other on and off for years," she admitted, "even after he started dating Mia. He always said they weren't serious, that it was mostly for his parents' approval." Sarah looked down. "He says it's just for show, that his parents are pressuring him to settle down because of the family business, but that nothing will change between us." She shrugged, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. "I want to, but lately I've been wondering if I'm just being naive." "You're not the only one," I said quietly. Then, taking a deep breath, "How would you feel about helping me show Mia and everyone else who James really is?" Over the next few weeks, I gathered evidence. Sarah introduced me to 2 other women James was currently involved with, both of whom believed they were in exclusive relationships with him. I collected text messages, photos, hotel receipts. I created a timeline of his infidelities, spanning years and including the entire duration of his relationship with Mia. I also hired a private investigator, using a significant portion of my savings. It was worth every penny when he uncovered financial irregularities in James's business dealings. Nothing illegal, but certainly unethical, with clients being overcharged and funds being misappropriated. All the while, I continued to participate in wedding preparations, smiling through fittings and tastings, nodding along as my mother gushed about what a perfect couple Mia and James made. I avoided being alone with her, knowing she would question me about our confrontation. When she tried to bring it up, I simply said, "You're right, Mom. I was being silly. The wedding should go forward exactly as planned." 3 days before the wedding, I asked Mia to meet me for lunch, just the two of us. We hadn't had much sister time amid all the wedding chaos, and she readily agreed. Over salads at her favorite restaurant, I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Are you happy, Mia? Really happy?" She seemed taken aback. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? I'm marrying James." "I know, but sometimes I get the feeling that you're going through with this because it's what Mom wants, not necessarily what you want." "I know you do, but love shouldn't make you smaller. It shouldn't make you doubt yourself or feel insecure. I've seen how you check his phone when he's not looking, how you get quiet when he cancels plans last minute, how you've stopped painting since you got engaged even though it used to be your passion." Tears welled in her eyes. "It's just wedding stress. Once we're married, things will settle down." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Mia, I need to show you something. And it's gonna hurt, but I'm showing you because I love you, and I can't stand by and watch you marry someone who doesn't deserve you." I pulled out my phone and showed her the first photo, James and Sarah at the coffee shop. Her face crumpled, but she didn't look as shocked as I'd expected. "There's more," I said gently. "A lot more. But before I show you, I need you to know that whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. If you want to go through with the wedding anyway, I'll stand beside you and never mention this again. But you deserve to make that choice with all the information." For the next hour, I showed her everything I'd gathered, the text messages, the hotel receipts, the testimonies from the other women, the financial documents showing how James had been misusing company funds. By the end, Mia was sobbing quietly, her makeup streaked down her face. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. "I just didn't want to believe it. Mom was so happy about the wedding, about James's family. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid." "Mom knows," I said quietly. "I showed her the first photo weeks ago. She told me to delete it and keep quiet." Mia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "She knew? And she still wanted me to marry him?" I nodded. "She cares more about the Harrington name and what this marriage would mean for her social standing than she does about your happiness." For a long moment, Mia was silent, processing everything. Then she straightened her shoulders, a resolve I'd rarely seen in her taking shape. "What do we do now?" I smiled, feeling a surge of pride for my sister. "That depends. How do you feel about making a statement?" The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. The Harrington estate was transformed into a fairy tale setting, with white roses and lilies adorning every surface. Guests began arriving at 3 p.m. for the 4 p.m. ceremony, mingling on the manicured lawn, admiring the elaborate decorations that had cost a small fortune. My mother was in her element, greeting guests in her designer dress, accepting compliments on the beautiful event she'd orchestrated. She'd barely spoken to me since our confrontation, but she'd been civil, probably assuming I'd decided to keep quiet for Mia's sake. James stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, flanked by his groomsmen. He looked confident, not a hint of guilt or nervousness on his face. The perfect groom, ready to pledge his life to a woman he'd been betraying from day one. At exactly 4 p.m., the string quartet began playing the processional. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one, myself included, each of us carrying a bouquet of white roses. The guests stood as the bridal march began, all eyes turning to the back of the aisle, expecting to see Mia in her designer gown. Instead, a video screen descended from the arbor behind the altar. James frowned, looking confused. My mother's face drained of color. The screen flickered to life, and there was Mia, still in her wedding dress, but sitting in what was clearly a hotel room. "Hello, everyone," she said, her voice steady. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person today. But I've recently learned some things about the man I was planning to marry, and I thought you all deserved to know the truth before witnessing what would have been the biggest mistake of my life." The video cut to a montage of evidence, photos of James with other women, screenshots of text messages, financial documents. Each piece was clearly labeled and dated, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. James's face had gone ashen, his eyes darting around as if looking for an escape route. My mother stood frozen, her hand clutched to her chest. The video returned to Mia. I want to thank my sister Ellie for having the courage to show me the truth when everyone else was content to let me live a lie. She's always been the strongest person I know, even when our family didn't acknowledge it. The camera panned out to reveal that I was sitting beside her in the hotel room, having slipped away from the ceremony after walking down the aisle. To James and his family, the deposits for this wedding are non-refundable. Consider it a small price to pay for the years of deception. To my mother, I hope someday you'll understand that my happiness should have been more important than your social aspirations. And to everyone else, thank you for coming. There's still an open bar and a fantastic meal waiting for you. Please enjoy the party. Just consider it a celebration of truth rather than a wedding. The screen went dark, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then chaos erupted. James stormed off the altar, pushing past his best man. Guests began talking all at once, some leaving, others moving toward the bar. My father, who had been waiting to walk Mia down the aisle, looked shell-shocked, but also, I thought, a little proud. And my mother? She stood perfectly still in the middle of it all, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her. When she finally moved, it was to walk directly toward me as I re-entered the venue from a side door. How could you? She hissed, grabbing my arm. Do you have any idea what you've done? The humiliation you've caused? I gently removed her hand. I saved my sister from marrying a cheater and a liar. Something you were willing to let happen because you cared more about the Harrington name than Mia's happiness. You've always been difficult, she said, her voice breaking. Always questioning, always challenging. Why couldn't you just let things be? Because some things shouldn't be, Mom. Some things deserve to be questioned and challenged. Like why you've always treated me like I was less important than Mia. Like why you were willing to sacrifice her happiness for your social standing. Like why, after all these years, you still can't see me for who I really am. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in my mother's eyes. Not guilt or remorse, not yet, but a crack in the armor she'd built around herself. Go to Mia, I said softly. She needs her mother right now. Not the social climber, not the wedding planner. Her mother. If you hurry, you might still be able to salvage something more important than this wedding. I walked away, leaving her standing there amid the ruins of her perfect day. I didn't know if she would follow my advice, if she was capable of putting Mia's needs above her own embarrassment. But I had done all I could. Mia and I spent the night in that hotel room, ordering room service, and talking more openly than we had in years. She cried, of course, but there was also laughter, the kind that comes after a narrow escape, tinged with relief and disbelief. I can't believe we did that, she said, shaking her head. Mom is going to disown us both. Maybe, I said. Or maybe this will finally make her see things differently. Because you never needed Mom's approval the way I did. You were always so sure of yourself, so independent. I felt like I had to be perfect all the time, or she'd stop loving me. I felt a lump in my throat. I wasn't sure of myself. I just learned early on that I wasn't going to get the same love and attention you got, so I stopped trying. Mia reached for my hand. I'm sorry, I should have seen it. I should have said something. It wasn't your responsibility, I assured her. We were kids. And besides, we're here now, aren't we? Finally being honest with each other. The aftermath of the non-wedding was as messy as you might expect. The story made the local news, with the Harrington family attempting damage control by claiming James had been, quote, set up. Few believed them, especially after two more women came forward with similar stories. Bin's quo, my mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. My father, however, called me the day after the wedding. I'm proud of you, Ellie, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. I should have done more over the years. Should have seen what was happening between you and your mother. I'm sorry. It's okay, Dad, I said, though we both knew it wasn't, not really. But it was a start. Mia moved to Chicago, taking an apartment just a few blocks from mine. She started painting again, her work darker and more complex than before, but also more honest. We had dinner together every Sunday, building the sister relationship we should have had all along. As for my mother, the social fallout from the wedding disaster was significant. Many of her friends took sides, some distancing themselves, others rallying around her. The humiliation forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself and her priorities. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said without preamble. "She thinks I've been projecting my own insecurities onto you for years, that I saw in you the independence I never had, and it threatened me." It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her. "I'd like to come visit," she continued. "Both you and Mia, if that's okay." The road to healing our family wounds would be long and uncertain. There would be setbacks and old patterns to overcome. But for the first time, I felt like we were all walking that road with our eyes open, seeing each other clearly. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to show them the truth, even when it hurts. And sometimes, the person who needs that truth the most is yourself. I had spent my whole life in the golden child's shadow, but in saving my sister from a lifetime of lies, I had finally stepped into the light.